Riches in the Hitches, an RV park investment podcast, takes you behind the scenes of the RV park industry, where park owners, investors, and other industry professionals share their unique journeys, challenges, and triumphs. From transforming raw land into a thriving campground to navigating the ups and downs of managing guests, this podcast uncovers the untold stories of the people who make RV life possible and the strategies behind building a successful investment. Whether you're a park owner seeking insights, an aspiring investor exploring opportunities in outdoor hospitality, an RVer curious about life on the other side of the check-in desk, or just someone who loves hearing entrepreneurial stories, we are excited for you to join us as we find riches in the hitches.
Hey, welcome to Riches in the Hitches, a podcast about RV park ownership and management. Today, we are excited to have Travis Lundquist. Make sure I say it right. He'll probably correct me in a second. From Blue Terra Development, who is the managers of three parks: Center Point, River Point, and Sun Creek Point luxury RV resorts. Travis, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm just a little teaser here to come. We're excited about this show because you're actually going to come and talk to us from the perspective of a management company, which is really cool because I don't think we've had a management company owner operator on here yet either. So that's going to be neat. So let's start with the parks themselves. If you could just give us a rundown of the parks, size, location, where they are, and how you came about either being the owner or manager of them.
So the first park that Blue Terra Development built was Center Point in Nampa, Idaho. It has 126 units on about 9 acres. It's more geared towards your long-term sites with a few seasonals and nightlies. Then they built River Point in Ontario, Oregon. It's about 45 minutes away from Nampa. That one has 179 sites, and the same model of being geared towards heavily towards your long term, and then having some area sites for your short term. Those both were built in the 21, 22 years. 23 they started on Sun Creek Point Resort. They opened up to their first guests in March of 2024. Their clubhouse and their C of O got completed in December of 2024. And so the park is now full operational.
So these are all...
Oh, good.
Yeah, so these are all pretty much brand new parks.
All pretty much brand new parks. Sun Creek is sitting on 225 sites, has two sections, an adult section and a family section. The adult section has its own clubhouse with its own restrooms, laundry, entertainment room, entertainment areas, dog parks. And then the main clubhouse is about 10,000 square feet. Has an indoor sports court, outdoor sports court, golf simulator, dog wash station, heated pool and spa that's year round. And so we were sitting in about 30-degree weather, and we had people in our hot tub and pool enjoying it.
I'm sure they did. Yeah.
Well, so, it's hard in winter trying to entertain guests when it's cold outside because you feel cold, you want to get bundled up, and you want to stay inside. And so trying to get them outside to do activities, and you heat a pool up to 93 degrees and the spa up to 104, then they come out.
They come out. That's great. But tell us about Blue Terra Development.
So Blue Terra Development, they came together to build multifamily home units. They built car washes, business offices, storage units, and then they started building RV parks. When they built the multifamily home units and the storage units, they would hire out a management company to fill it and then to sell it. A business is going to sell better when it's fully occupied and ready to go than it being empty. When they decided to jump into the RV park industry, they hunted for some management teams, and they weren't finding what they were wanting. So they created Blue Terra Management. And so Blue Terra Management is managing the properties for Blue Terra Development.
Very good. And is that where you came along?
So I came along in February of 2024. I have a history of working with KOAs. I ran a KOA in Pendleton, Oregon, a KOA in Pasco, Washington, and one in Herkimer, New York. And so getting the experience of different from parks that were the demographic of having long terms to parks that were exclusively resort and nightly traffic. And being with a franchise like KOA just gave me a lot more insight in the RV park industry. And so when I came back over to Idaho, where family live, and jumping on with Blue Terra, then I was able to take their parks and add my spin to it. And we've had great success with them. And even this last year, 2024, we were up almost 30% in the parks.
Wow.
January of 2025, we're up 57% from 2024.
In revenue?
In revenue.
And these are at the new parks.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you're taking over a new park, this is a question I get a lot of time, either developing it primarily from the development perspective of building a new park. What's the ramp up? Like how many years would you expect to have a park then at stabilized, year one, grand opening, year two, et cetera? How does that usually look for you?
So, and that's one thing that we're discussing with the ownership now of Sun Creek, as we got up to 80% in the summer months. And then in the winter months, we dropped down to about 50%. And we saw that in other parks. It's a little bit skewed when they developed with Centerpoint. They were almost a full occupancy in 4 weeks. And it was funny because they built their park at the same time my sister was building her park. A shout out to Abundant Life in Caldwell, Idaho. She built a beautiful park, but she also had a couple great consultants, myself and my dad, consulting her on building her park. My dad is the owner of the lease on Boise on the River, which is in Garden City, Idaho. So we have a kind of family roots in RV parks in this area. So when Centerpoint was built up and Abundant Life, they opened within months of each other. They both sold out within weeks. My sister's plan was to get hers to occupancy in 2 years so they can get out of the job they were doing. Her husband was a full-time drywaller. And 3 weeks they were sold out. 2 months he was retiring. He was like, this is not what was planned, but hey, we'll take it. When I reached out, so there's a couple groups on Facebook, and as we reach out to these groups that are like campground owners and managers, we can post questions like this to get an idea of what other people have seen in the market. And you're looking about 2 years once you're fully developed to get it to the occupancy of stabilization. I always tell people you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And so summers are going to be great. You're going to see a lot of people coming in because a lot of other RV parks are probably sold out. And so they may not have been your first choice. And so you take them in, they get to experience what you're offering, and maybe you'll get their business back next year and get some more new business. So those are those 2 steps forward, but your shoulder season and your winter is your 1 step back. And it makes it a little bit harder for people to survive. And so having the funds not to just develop your park, but to operate your park successfully for 2 years without relying on the income from the park itself.
Yeah, I was going to say, being fully leased up in 4 weeks, I wouldn't say is very typical. Would you attribute that to the quality of the park, or was it the location? What's the driving factor that made those lease ups so successful so quickly?
It was definitely location. Looking at the area, the Idaho area was very undersupplied for the RV spots. And so when I look at and investigate areas, I look at the number of sites, not just the number of parks. Every site is part of that supply. And so when you look at the Boise Valley, every park was sold out. They had a 80-person waiting list at every single park. Some parks had like 200-person wait list. And so that showed that there was demand there and the supply was lacking. Yeah.
And then when you open a brand new park, do you ever see, so I've thought about this, and sometimes it seems like the first year is actually more successful than potentially the second year. And then the third year time kind of comes back to, is there like a newness grand opening excitement curve that you have to overcome? Have you seen that?
I haven't. I know that it can feel that way. I think part of it is the owners and the managers themselves, the excitement of that first year compared to the second year. you're eager, you're willing to bend over backwards, helping out your customers. And then comes your second year, and you might get a little bit battle worn and trying to renew that energy that you had from the first year, and making sure that you're, like every business, they need returning customers and new customers, making sure you're getting both of those.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, maybe we can talk about, you're managing 3 different properties, all pretty new, all really nice. And so you have a semi-unique perspective there of some expense ratios and stuff that I think listeners would be really intrigued on, because most of the parks, are pretty old that a lot of us
Mm-hmm.
own and operate. And so maybe we can just kind of talk through a few of those and see how that differs and changes. So I would start with like, what is your target expense ratio totally that you're trying to hit, or profit margin that you're trying to hit, for these different parks both, and does that change from them being a long-term park or a nightly seasonal park?
The long-term versus nightly seasonal, the nightly seasonal, they demand a lot more. The guests are going to spend a lot more compared to your monthly rates are a third of what a nightly rate is for the month.
Right.
And so when your nightly people are coming in and they're spending anywhere from $79 to $150, depending on whether on a regular site or a patio site, whether it's the 4th of July weekend or it's a Tuesday in May, they're demanding. They want to be taken care of. They back 40 years ago, they were used to going to state parks. They're used to paying $7. Now it's like $27. And so when they come into your park and you're $79, they're kind of shell shocked, and they're like, well, I want to get everything I can possibly get for my $79.
Right.
At the resorts, when you're hitting destinations like West Glacier or Yellowstone, it's even more so. And so they want to be entertained. They want live music. They want arts and crafts. They want swimming pools. They want games for the kids, tours, and all. They want to be overwhelmed with the amount of stuff they can do. So that way they're going to come back next year. They don't want to be bored. It's their vacation. Your long-term parks, we're offering them a place to live. And so a lot of times they're just looking for the least expensive place and a way to do it. And so it's a different clientele. With the long-term parks that we have, we were able to have a lot of our work campers in a barter agreement. Some parks where they'll just hire out all their people. When I came into this company, they had a assistant manager and a manager and assistant manager at each of the parks. Then they hired out for a landscaping contractor, a housekeeping contractor, and the electrician they'd call in, the plumber they'd call in, and they didn't have any room in their budget for any other employee. And coming from the KOAs that I ran, we did a barter system and we had several part-time employees. And so I was like,
Right.
There's a better way of doing it. And I showed them on paper that we could save ourselves tens of thousands of dollars by doing a barter system versus hiring out skilled contract labor. Your landscaper, they're going to come in, they're going to mow, they're going to weed eat, they're going to blow the clippings, they might fertilize, but they're not going to pick up dog poop. They're not going to pick up trash. They're not going to tell you that a tenant's site has a leaking sewer hose. They're going to fly in there. They want to be in there for 6 to 8 hours. They're going to be gone. They're not going to come back until next week. Having a maintenance crew allows them to look at each of their sections and each of their sites and see, okay, this site's getting a little bit busy with debris or clutter, so we need to send them a notice. This thing's going to be a future problem with this branch that's falling down. We're developing a sinkhole or whatever that may be happening. You just don't get that from those outside crews. Our outside snowplow guy, he ran into bushes and brought out the dirt into the roads. And so having everything done in-house, it has saved us money and had more security and a cleaner park than we had when we were paying more money for that. And so when we were looking at labor versus like our total expenses versus our income, I used to run hotels back in the early 2000s. And the training in hotels, they would teach you, it was a 30-30-30-10 rule. And I'm not sure if you ever heard of that. It was 30% to product, 30% to your building, 30% to labor, and 10% to you.
Okay.
And so it's, and in hotels and restaurants, it's very much true. You know, when you're paying, you got your mortgage, your rent and your facility costs, and then your labor costs are huge. They're 26 to 30%. Then you got your product that you're spending money on, whether it be food or jackets or whatever, sitting on the hard goods sitting on the shelves. And then, you know, the owner takes home 10%. You know, a lot of times they're spending 15% to get that 10%, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Especially in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
But when we went over to RV parks, the one thing we noticed is our product and our building are the same thing. Our mortgage is our product. So those 30% kind of combine. And then in our barter system with our employees, it helps drive down that cost. And so we're one of the highest paid for our employees in the Valley. When some parks are at an Idaho minimum wage in a barter system at $7.25, we're over $15.
Okay.
And even at $15 for our employees, our percentage of expenses to income is 35%.
Okay.
And so it's
your total operating expense is 35% of your income.
not counting your bank loans, but our
Right.
total operating expenses is 35%.
That's truly exceptional. I don't think I've seen a park operate at that.
And that's 3 parks. Now, at a resort, your employee costs alone can be 20%. And that's because you're going to hire a lot more full-time people, because you're going to have arts and crafts, and you're going to have your food and beverage, and you're going to have your lifeguards and task of maintenance guys and reservationists. But in the parks that we currently run, being the model of more long-term than short-term, that is what we're running right now for our expenses.
So your long-term parks are around 35%, and the resort you're 55, 60?
The resort was a little bit higher. I'd say about 45 to 50.
Okay. And then are you, that barter system, do you factor that in as an expense or loss of revenue? Or
Yes, that's included in that expense. And so if someone is, for our barter system, we trade their rent, electricity and propane for the hours they put in. And so we charge them rent, then we discount that rent to show up on our occupancy reports and our expense reports. And so it shows what my employees' full cost is. But that's included. But all 3 of our parks run anywhere between 35 and 38%.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think industry is more closer to 50 to 60%, prior, again, not counting debt service and stuff, but actual operating costs. So that's pretty cool. Now, do you see that as being sustainable, or is any of that due to the newness of the park, in that there's, I'm assuming, very little repairs and maintenance? There's not a lot of things that are broken right now, because these are all brand new parks.
It's been sustainable when even the parks that I had in the KOAs when they were 15 to 20 years old.
Yeah.
We had a lot of repairs and maintenance, but those repairs and maintenance were all done in-house. When we painted a building, we painted as my maintenance team that did that. We built patio sites, irrigation systems. We do some small plumbing, small electrical. But a lot of it was done in-house. Anything that was a higher danger or required a certified technician, we'd bring in. But most everything else was done in-house, and so that helps bring the cost down.
Okay, awesome. So another question that's often asked is, how do you figure out the head count, right? And so I think you just addressed more of the maintenance side of that. And not to put words in your mouth, but you're going to look at the cost to the contractor, and if that cost of the contractor certainly far outweighs the cost of hiring an in-house person, that's a better option. Or even, sounds like you're saying that even if the cost of a full-time employee is maybe a little bit more than that contract service, it's still well worth it. How do you size headcount? Like, is it by a pad count? 100, 200, it takes X and X. Well, how do you think about that?
So one thing that we've looked at in both, when I worked for the KOA, that company owned 3 different KOAs. They had the Pendleton KOA at 107 sites, the Pasco at 185, and Boise at 220. And they found that at 100 is your baseline for covering your bills. Anything over 100 starts to add more money into your pocket and less into expenses. And so you start seeing a separation of expenses and profit as you get over that 100 mark. And so it seemed like at that 100 was kind of a base of what we needed for employees. And then once we get over that site count, then we can start adding more employees here and there based on, the hours of the office. If my hours are more than 8 hours a day at the office, I'm going to need to hire more people, so I'm not paying overtime. Or with my maintenance, we have maintenance on payroll. I think it's 13 hours a day from 9 to 10 each day. Right. And so to cover that spread, I need to have the proper amount of maintenance guys. And so if I'm doing a barter system, then I can look at, my barter system is 16 hours a week. That puts 2 shifts per maintenance guys to cover all the shifts that I'm covering for maintenance. This is X equals Y sort of thing. Some people get performing with employees understaffed, and some people are overstaffed. And really looking at your percentages of where you're at with your income is one thing, month to month. Even when we were in Herkimer, New York, we looked at it on a monthly basis, and our shoulder seasons were very, very soft. And so having a full crew during our shoulder season didn't make absolute sense. When it, all of a sudden our payroll's running 40-50% when it should be down in the 20s.
Yeah. So where do you try to keep your payroll as a percentage of revenue?
Right now, my payroll as a percentage of revenue is below 20.
Okay. So that then leaves you only 15% of other expenses.
Yes.
So that's where you got to be really tight on your management.
Yeah. And then, the expense of payroll. So if I have a snowplow in my park versus paying a snowplow guy, that expense of payroll plus the gas or the plow itself, they combine together versus paying a outside contractor to come in and plow.
Right.
This winter we called and for them to come out for the 4 days of the snowfall, they're going to charge us $1,200.
That's kind of nuts.
It absolutely is. Especially when you can do these things in house.
Yeah.
So when we were developing, we developed 56 sites in Pasco with our park that was 185. And so we brought that one to 241, adding patio sites and much larger sites. We put in all our trees and all our grass. Now, a contractor, when you put in a tree, you pay the cost of the tree, the delivery of the tree, and the planting of the tree. And so you end up paying that tree 3 times when you put in trees. So if I want to save 60% of that tree, I pick it up myself and I plant it myself.
Right. That makes sense. Payroll is, as you just described, is always generally the largest expense. And I think it's also key, right? It's the key to success with any park, having a great team, both from execution and efficiency, but also from the hospitality component of that. With the barter system you're mentioning, how long does a team member generally stay on the team? Are they sort of seasonal and transient? They come and go. How does that look like from a turnover perspective?
And it's different on if your park is year round versus seasonal. I know there's a lot of parks, like Astoria, when their main season is during the summer season, that they'll lose a lot of their seasonals. One, it's because their income drops significantly, so they don't need as many people working for them as they would during the summertime. And then some close completely. West Glacier, because they'll get 8 feet of snow. They don't have anybody working in the winter during that time, so a lot of those seasonals will either leave and find something during the winter time to work, and then they'll come back up to West Glacier. The work camper group, I think on Facebook, I think it had like 62,000 people on that group. These are people who travel full time. They love the lifestyle. They can really associate well with your guests because they know what the guest is coming in with. they came in with a flat tire, guess what? Your front desk who lives in a camper knows what it is to get a flat tire on the RV.
Right.
They had an issue with an AC. Well, they too have had an issue with an AC. So the work camper organization is a great group of people to work with. And so if you're a seasonal park working with work campers, that's like we work at your park in the summer, and then we go to this park in the south in the winter, and then we'll be back next summer because we really loved working with you. With a year-round park, we find a lot of our staff stays with us for years. They enjoy what they do. We get a lot of people who are retired professionals. I have one guy who is an aerospace engineer. He's way overqualified for my job that I'm having him pick up dog poop and so he applied for at Home Depot and they said, no, you're too qualified. He says, look, I'm bored. I need something to do. And there's a reason I'm applying for it because I need something to do. And it's like, so I hired him. He's a great guy. He does an amazing job. And when we were having an electrical issue, he gave me 3 pages of what's going on versus, I don't know, they don't have power. And so he, when you are working with people who are living in RVs, you're part of that demographic. You have your people who are full-time, that may be young families, people who are tradesmen, from traveling nurses to the iron workers, welders, electricians. Linemen is a big one for us. And then you get people who they're retired. They wanted to downsize. They go from park to park as the wind blows them or as their comfort allows. Their only destination are like birthday parties for grandchildren and kids and weddings. And so when we get those that are retired working for us, a lot of them are professional. They own businesses. They were retired from the plumbing or electrical. And so when they're working maintenance and they have that wealth of knowledge, it's great to dive into.
Yeah. That's what I've loved so much about being in this industry is meeting the great people, like both from the guests are amazing, the staff are amazing, even other professionals, other owners, other managers, everyone's just got, I think, just a great heart. I don't know what it is about the camping RV industry. It's just, it brings people together. And that's the big part of our company is bringing connection to people, both in the literal sense, like I'm giving you a water, power, sewer connection, and I'm trying to connect them with each other into nature, which is pretty phenomenal. You mentioned, so you guys are primarily obviously north, mountain, north kind of demographic. I'm the exact opposite. I'm in Florida and Alabama and South Carolina. It's flat. There's no winter. There's no rain. So how different is it running a park that you have to contend with 8 feet of snow? That's something I've never thought about.
So a lot of those areas, when they're having to tend with that much snow, usually they're seasonal. They're going to close after Labor Day. They'll open up after April. The Boise area, because we're considered a high desert, but we're also the city of trees. And so we can have a snowstorm bringing it 8 inches. And then they had Snowmageddon in this area, is what they called Snowmageddon. They got like 4 feet of snow one year, and it was collapsing people's buildings, their carports. It was utter disaster for about 6 weeks. And so you plow pathways from their door to their electrical and water boxes, and pathways from their door to your door, and neighbors help each shovel the neighbors out. Like, we get a lot of elderly people, and so you kind of like check in on them and assist them where that you can. And so it's the RV, especially with the your long-term parks, you can create an amazing community where your resorts. The hard thing with that is like people come and go. They might show up a second or third time during your season, but every day is just a new wave of people. And so our communities, we're seeing them on a daily basis. Right. We will host potlucks and chili feeds, and we're doing an Easter egg hunt on Easter for the kids. And so the families will come out. And so you really get to know the community and get to know people.
So you're creating like the snow version of a corn maze. When it snows hard, they got all these little paths trying to get there.
You got to keep the kids entertained. We ended up with snowmen everywhere. You could tell where the families are staying versus like the elderly couple.
Yep.
The families, they have snowmen all over and they'll stamp down all the snow, and then you'll go to the next RV and it's all pristine in their driveway, and it's like, yeah, they're not coming out right now.
Yeah. We actually, so we live in Pensacola, Florida, and this year was absolute phenomenal. We had almost 12 inches of snow, and it was the coolest thing ever. The kids just snowmen and snow angels. We took the tube off of the boat and tied it behind a 4-wheeler, and we're using that to go sling them down the road. So once in a lifetime event for us, for sure.
Absolutely once in a lifetime. I cannot believe it snowed.
It was nuts. It was crazy. So you've had the opportunity to manage and be part of a lot of different types of parks. I'm curious, what's your thoughts on the franchise model and working and managing a park underneath that versus where you're at now, where they're standalone in essence and single owner. What's some big advantages or disadvantages? What do you like or dislike on either?
So the nice thing, like the franchise starting out with KOA is like one of your top franchises.
Sure.
They did an amazing job several years ago when they looked at their franchise and the health of it. At one time, they had like 1,000 parks. They had people that had like 2 RV sites in their backyard could be a KOA. Yeah. There was KOAs that were just tent campgrounds, no RVs. It was just a tent camping. And so they tightened their standards in their parks, and they got down to, I think, like 450 parks. Mm-hmm. When I joined their system, they started to distinguish their parks, so that way you can kind of know what you're going to get.
Right.
So they had journeys, holidays, and resorts.
Right.
And a journey, weren't required to have any pools, activities, or or cabins. And so if you're traveling from your home to a destination, say, you're going to the coast and you have to stop somewhere along the way, that's not your destination. You're kind of passing through the area. So that would be kind of a journey. Right. Some of them may have a few more things than your holiday, but they designate themselves as a journey. Your holidays are parks like, say, throughout your Florida area, you can have a lot of holidays where Disney World is your destination, but you're going to be at that park for a week while you're at Disney World. And so the holidays are required to have swimming pools, more activities, and some cabins. Okay. And then your resort, you're required to have a lot more activities. You're required to have food service, 2 meals a day during your peak season, and a lot more cabins. And so of the system of the 550 parks they have now, I think 17 parks are resorts. Mm-hmm. And then you got a healthy mix of journeys and holidays. So then people kind of got an idea of what they were going to get. Being with a franchise like KOA, it really depends on the area and if it's really required to be a KOA. Along the Oregon coast, there are a lot of parks there, but only a few KOAs, because no matter what, you're a park on the Oregon coast. So you're going to get visitors no matter what. Yeah. And so then they look at whether or not it's worth it to them as owners to pay that franchise fee to KOA on guests that they're already going to get. And then some, as they get into a new park, they will like, okay, how do we advertise ourselves? How do we establish ourselves? Where KOA has established many parks over the years. And they are a great mentor to have on somebody who's questioning whether or not to be a KOA. The numbers that they generate from their parks is amazing. They can tell you how long people travel for, age-wise, length of vehicle, how long from park to park do they travel. They know, like, generally your retired professional RVers will travel 3.5 to 5 hours a day. Your weekend warriors travel 8 hours a day. Yeah. When we were in Pendleton, they said majority of your customers come from this KOA. Your next majority comes from this KOA. And so they knew what states were our most popular guests, all sorts of information. When we built the 56 sites, we built sites that we could start to accommodate rigs over 38 feet.
Mhm.
So we built sites and our pull throughs were 86 feet long. So we went from 55 foot long to 86 foot long. And so I wanted to know, with those longer sites, how has that changed for those longer rigs? And KOA, they knew from, I could do a report and it said from my rigs that were 0 to 20 feet stayed 1.6 days. My 20 to 40 feet stayed 1.8, I believe. And my 40 feet plus stayed over 2 days on average.
Okay.
So the larger the rig, the longer the stay. But
Right.
these are numbers that KOA as a franchise is able to develop when they have 500 parks across the United States over 60 years of doing business. So when you're not with a franchise, those are some of the things that you're going to have to research and find out for yourself. When people are, we've talked to like a little bit about advertising at the beginning, with, you know, like how like the expense of advertising and marketing, I always looked at my 10% that I paid KOA as my advertising.
Right.
The franchise fees, they take 2% in advertising and 8% in franchise fees, but I just like, hey, 10%, that's my advertising budget. Their national advertising, people stayed with me because I was a KOA, not because I
Right.
am Travis running a park in Pendleton.
Right.
And so, you know, it's the advantages of running KOAs. They know from the parks that they helped start up, like the percentage that they see. I think it was like 17% increase year over year for 5 years is what they see. And so, you know, you look at, it's like, okay, if my percentage is like 3 to 5% right now, if I bring in KOA, I pay them 10%, and I'm going to end up getting 4 more percent on top of what I've been doing already. You know, so does KOA pay for themselves? Yes, they can.
Yeah, for sure. And now, what's on the flip side? You know, what have you found? What are the positives of not being underneath that brand
So
where you guys are
not
now?
being under the brand of KOA or other franchise brands is freedom. You know, with KOA,
Yeah.
it's like, this is the shirt you're going to wear, and this is the colors that you're going to have. These are the signs you're going to put up, and so there's a little bit more restrictions, but they vetted those restrictions. Where a non-franchise, it is completely up to you what you want to do. If you want to, you know, devote 10% to marketing, run the marketing campaign that you want to run. Where KOA was national marketing, so they weren't focused just on me. Where
Mm-hmm.
non-franchise, I can take that marketing budget and focus it just on me and my customers. And then sometimes you just may not need a franchise. If you're going into an area that is undersupplied, like my sister did with Abundant Life, she sold out in 3 weeks. This
Yeah,
area was needing it very bad. And so 2 parks opened up within months of each other. They added 250 new sites to the valley, and they were both sold out within a month.
that's amazing.
It absolutely is. And so
Yeah,
it's a great story to have. That's not going to happen in every area, but
right.
that's, you know, the location, you know, am I putting a park in a location that has high demand, low supply right now that I don't need a franchise? Or am I putting it on a piece of land that I own, so it's more convenient for me to put an RV park here? And so do I need some help from somebody else other than my own uh, opinions or my own skill set that can bring more clientele to my park?
So Travis, this is, I think, a great way to start wrapping up this. You're getting ready to, I think, build or buy your first park as the owner. Is that right?
We are. So we're managing 3 parks now for Blue Terra Development. And so we found a park that is already existing,
Okay.
that fits all the criteria that we want in a park. And so we have it under contract and should be closing up within the next month and a half.
Okay. So will it be a franchise? Are you going to be standalone, or how
No,
are all these
it's
lessons going to come into play now that you're the one writing the checks?
So it's going to be a standalone.
Okay.
And for us, because like this park in this area, Boise area, because it's not a destination for RV travelers most of the time, most of the parks stay between 80 and 90% occupied in long-term traffic.
Okay.
And so they're just looking for an RV park. Whether you're franchised or not, it doesn't matter. So if my park is going to be 80% occupied with people who do not care about my franchise or not, I'd rather not pay 10% on them to someone
Sure.
that didn't bring them to me, you know.
That makes
And
sense.
so this park, you know, we're really excited about. It's going to be it's going to be unlike any of the other parks in the Boise Valley.
Okay.
Very few parks have cabins or tents, and we're going to have a lot of that. The water activities that we'll have, the green belt that we'll have,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be an amazing park that we're going to be taking over and developing.
Well, I know you can't or probably don't want to share too much until it's closed. So when it does close, love to have you back on, and we'll talk about that specific park and all the excitement of taking over a park as a new owner. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's one of those, like, I am excited to talk about it. It's one of those that I've dreamed of owning this property specifically for years. It wasn't one that was on my company's radar until I pointed it out to them, and they just had no idea that property existed like it did. And so bringing this one to the company, working out the logistics of it, making the offer on it, and being the lead on this has been amazing. Luckily with the bank, we've used the same bank for all of our parks, Idaho Central Credit Union.
Okay.
Shout out to them. They've been fantastic. You build one park and you make it successful, then they're very eager to do another. Because
Sure.
like every business, it's a gamble, and that's what the bank is looking at is, are you worth the risk? Do you have the collateral for the to back up this gamble that you're making?
Right.
And so as you do the first one, sometimes they're a little hesitant, but you do really well in it. Then the second, third, and fourth gets a lot easier.
It's a relationship, just like everything else. Bankers are still people. They want to know
They
that you know
are
what you're
very
doing.
much.
Build a relationship. Awesome. Well, man, that's a wealth of knowledge. You're obviously a true expert in the space, and thank you so much for being on here. We'll wrap it up with a final question. One of the things that we talked about even in this podcast, and that is, I would say, a core value or motto really of our company, is the idea of disconnecting and reconnecting. So disconnecting from the things that distract us from the important things in life, and reconnecting to the most valuable things in our life, which is almost always relationships, right? Relationships with each other, relationships with God's creation, that beautiful land that we're out there. So what is it that you do personally to disconnect, and what are you disconnecting from, and what are you doing to reconnect to those most important things?
So disconnecting from the park, like we talked about, sometimes in that first year, you're very eager and excited to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes if we don't step back and look at, how did I handle that situation with that customer? Sometimes we get raw. And so
Mm-hmm.
we kind of need to let ourselves heal from the demand of the RV park. We have to get away from it.
Right.
And whether we go camping or on a vacation, and it really resets your clock, it refills your cup. So that way you can come back and just come with full energy and a new lease on why we got into this first place. So my family's been the number one of, let's go camping, let's go hiking, let's go to a movie, let's play game, let's just sit and chit chat, let's have fun. My dad is, always wanted to say, hey, let's take out the side by sides, let's go shooting, let's go rappelling. When I was in the KOAs, one of my biggest ones to disconnect is I was in search and rescue.
Okay.
And so we get called out to go recover a person that broke something out of the mountains and carry them out for 10 hours. Or, you might have to go help with a body for someone that, was injured past expectations. And then, you go do something like that. We've done plane wrecks and drownings and animal attacks. You do something like that. And then when you come back to work on Monday, that you have a different reconnect. Life seems a little bit different than when you carry someone out 10 hours with a broken leg and they just love you to death. Different type of hospitality right there.
For sure. Put your problems in perspective, not having a broken water pipe and having some issues doesn't seem nearly as burdensome as.
You looking at the priorities, and it's like, hey, this is going on. It's like, yeah, it's not that big of a problem anymore.
Yeah. What I love about, Travis, what you just said is two things. One is your off time, you go camping and go do very similar to what you're doing as a profession. And then two is that, again, in your off time, your free time, or the way that you regenerate is you actually go help more people and provide a different hospitality, but still primarily outside, and you're out there helping others. Man, that's what a great testimony. Thank you.
We appreciate it and appreciate you being on the show. Like you said, this is a business that is beyond what we any other business. The community, like we were used to run hotels, and even in the hospitality industry, the running hotels versus RV parks. RV parks are a different breed of clients. They want to get out of their rigs. They want to meet their neighbors. They want to say hello. Mm-hmm. They want to be active, and it is a wonderful business industry to be a part of, because they are a great group of people that we serve.
It's one of the last communities that exist. Well, I can see in the background that you are getting summoned by many people, which is another awesome part about being the manager. So with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you, Travis, for being on here. We'll post some show notes below that has all the contact information for Travis and his parks, so you guys can visit him. And Travis, thank you for being on Riches in the Hitches.
Thanks, Robert. We appreciate being on and look forward to being on again.